You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengel.
Welcome again to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Michelle and I have been podcasting for 7 straight hours. One of the things that came up is Will Rutherford and I believe that Anthony Richardson is the future of the Colts, and Michelle doesn't. Where do you stand?
I'm still on an incomplete on this one. I think I go back and forth. You can obviously see the potential. I mean, we've known that for a while. I think the last 2 weeks have been really promising with him. His performance on Sunday was much better than the box score shows.
Absolutely.
But there's still some things he's got to work on. And I think ultimately you've got to get results. That's one thing about the NFL is you just don't have time. We've seen that. Countless examples out there. So they've got to find a way to get this offense going. And there's so many things wrong right now that need to be fixed. Right now, I think so much of Richardson's development is just mentally. How can he come through all of this? You always wonder when a guy takes a beating, both physically on the field, but also off the field. Just in terms of, does the organization still trust them? Does he still trust them? How do the fans feel? All those things. I want to see how he comes out of that at the end of the year this year. I think that's going to go a long way toward determining his future with this team and in this league.
Except for finishing drives, I thought the Colts played really well. Of course, you had the drop touchdown reception that would have, I believe, given them the lead in the first half. And especially the first half, I thought they played pretty well on Sunday, didn't you?
Yeah, I think the frustrating thing about it was they had a chance to be much more in that game, finishing the drives in the red zone and the penalties. I mean, they were just overwhelmed by avoidable mistakes, things like grabbing a defensive lineman's face mask as he's going by you.
Yeah.
Just self-inflicted wounds that gave them no chance against a Lions team that honestly probably played like a C-plus game for them. They didn't have to exert themselves. And I think that's the most disappointing thing from the Colts standpoint.
Yeah, George, getting back to Richardson, for just a moment, I told Greg I think one of my biggest issues and concerns with him going forward too is that his durability. Running quarterbacks. I mean, I think it shortens their longevity. And Lamar Jackson's been banged up through the years, and I think it's kind of hurt the Ravens in the postseason. Even if he's healthy, I'm just missing. You miss those reps, and I. My concern is, can Richardson stay healthy enough that he can get the reps and learn, because so far he's behind just on quarterback experience,
There's no
game
question about that.
experience.
There's absolutely no question about that. Last year was about the worst possible outcome you could have. Him only playing 4 games, missing the rest of the year with that shoulder injury. Reps he absolutely had to have. You were starting over this year as a rookie. And then he gets, I think, 4 games in this year before he got injured again. This one obviously wasn't as bad, but it's something that you're certainly going to deal with these running quarterbacks. As you mentioned with Lamar Jackson, you see it year in and year out with him. And I think that's one of the big concerns. I was encouraged Sunday because I thought Detroit did a really good job of basically saying, we're going to take away Jonathan Taylor and we're going to punish Anthony Richardson every time he carries the football. We're going to make you want to throw the ball from the pocket. And I thought Richardson held up to that beating pretty well. But 17 weeks, year after year, that's a really hard thing to do. And I think it's going to be that's a big part of the story with him. Can he physically hold up as he gets better and better? I think his passing game, you're seeing some positive movement there, but there's a lot of work still to be done. And then he's got to stay healthy. There's no question about that.
And probably to me, I think maybe the biggest key is he's got to go into the offseason healthy. He needs to stay around. I think he needs to stay around to be in the building with the offensive coaches. And I also think some of the receivers need to stay around, and they need to work out in the offseason. I mean, they need to get together. I know you only have so many like team practices, but I think you can do the individual stuff a lot. And I think that would be real beneficial to Richardson, and it's things he didn't really get to do a lot of last offseason because of his injury.
Yeah, there's no doubt. The chemistry with these receivers, there's a lot of work because at times when he hasn't been hurt, they have. So even the times that they've been together has been limited just because, Michael Pittman was dealing with a back injury. He was in and out of practice most of the year. Josh Downs probably isn't going to practice this week. We'll see whenever he's going to be able to get back. Even the amount of time that he's had is less than you think because of the injuries to the receivers. So yeah, there's no question that chemistry with him, this coaching staff, everybody on this team. He's going to be on his third center of the season on Sunday. I mean, there are so many little pieces of this offense that need to come together, and it's all about time on task and reps and chemistry and the time that they have together. And yeah, there's no doubt the offseason needs to be devoted to just trying to increase that in every way you can. He's only got, 12 starts, I think, right now in his NFL career, so he's still not even a full season under his belt. It's a big challenge. There's no question.
How is the overall health of the team? Getting anybody back this week?
Maybe Bernard Ryman. We'll see. Today was just a
That would be
walkthrough,
huge.
so they're estimating, and that's always tough. But he was supposed to do some work today. That report should be out here probably in a half hour or so. We should see. I'm guessing he's going to be limited from the way that Shane Steichen described it. But yeah, that would be a big step forward if they can get him back. At this point, you've got to believe Tanner Bordellini's not going to play on Sunday. I can't remember the last time a player cleared the concussion protocol in a week. It just doesn't happen. We've seen it now throughout the league. It's my very strong assumption that Bordellini won't play. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do at right guard. There's not an injury situation there. But Shane Steichen was kind of evasive today when he was asked, are they going to make a change? We know Mark Glowinski was out into the practice squad last week. Could they possibly move like Matt Gonsalves there if Ryman's back to play at left tackle? So we'll see. But I know Dalton Tucker has had a rough go of it the last few weeks. Undrafted guy thrown into the heat of the fire. Had a really nice start for them, but certainly has been one of the reasons that line has struggled in the last few weeks.
George, how do you assess the Colts' chances? I know they're outside right now, outside of the playoffs. Do you see any scenario where they get into the playoffs?
Schedule is friendly, so that's probably the thing they have best going for them. Denver's the only team left with a winning record. That game could be absolutely huge coming after the bye because it's obviously going to be a tiebreaker scenario. Broncos have a 2-game lead on them right now, but the Broncos also have a tough schedule the rest of the way. So if you could find a way to win that game, that might be the key, honestly.
Well, and it starts
But
this Sunday. You got to beat
you've
New
got to.
England in
They're
New
all must
England.
win. They're all must wins the rest of the way out. There's
Right.
no question about that.
They
You
kind of
could
got to go
maybe get
5
in
and
at
0.
9-8. Maybe you can get in at 9-8, but you don't want to mess with tiebreakers and things. You've got to win Sunday against New England, and in the health, that's a big question. I mean, we just talked about, the offensive line's still banged up. Josh Downs probably not going to play. We'll see. Shane Steichen said it looks like it's going to be tough for him to play this week. That's not a good sign from your head coach. So you could be down one of your top weapons. You could have more damage on that offensive line. You got to find a way to go and win in New England, though. You've got a 3-win New England team, and I think 3 2-win teams after Denver left. You've got to take advantage of that. If you don't, you're not going to the postseason. They probably need to go 5-0. They can't be worse than 4-1.
Okay, if they don't make the postseason this year, is this the end of the Chris Ballard era?
That's a really good question. And we just don't know what's going through Jim Irsay's mind. The last time he was asked publicly how he measures Chris Ballard's progress, he said something along, this was like the beginning of last year, he said something along the lines of he just wants to know that things are heading in the right direction and that would be obvious, just from the way the results went. You would have to think if they don't make the postseason, if they finish 9-8 or worse, it's not a step forward from last year. So I think it would be hard to say the team's going in the right direction. It's 8 years now for Chris Ballard. They've had, 2 playoff appearances, no division titles, just 1 playoff win. It's a tough resume. I would think that there's, at the very least, there's going to be some long conversations in January if this team's not playing playoff football.
Well, no one works harder on his job than George Bremer. I hope you have a good day off tomorrow. for Thanksgiving. Have a happy Thanksgiving because you're about to get really busy again.
Hey, it's fun though, right? I mean, this is the
That's
best
right.
time of year. We got basketball everywhere. Lots of storylines out there. Big one tonight, LaPel and Alexandria. Should be an outstanding girls basketball game.
Thanks as always to George Bremer for joining the Central Indiana Sports Report and talking some Colts, and also to Michelle Garmon for joining me for 8 hours of podcasting. 8 hours of podcasting on Wednesday morning, and now we're going to do a little more this evening. So thank you to Michelle for all that she's done. She's amazing. The Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I love Susie.